what factors does the court consider when they're looking at how long support should be paid for or how long it should last?
Yeah, definitely
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Illinois Family Law Podcast. My name is Katie VanDeusen. I'm the managing partner at Sterling Lawyers. And today I have with me Reyna Herrera. She's an attorney who joined our team recently and has been just crushing it. So thanks for joining me today, Reyna.
Thanks, Katie. Hi, everyone.
So, Reyna, today we're going to be talking about spousal support. So, we will be talking specifically about how long spousal support lasts and just kind of delving into details as it relates to maintenance specifically. So, one of the biggest questions I feel like we get asked as attorneys when facing a divorce case is how long will I have to pay maintenance or how long can I anticipate receiving maintenance? So, today we're going to break down exactly how courts calculate maintenance or spousal support in Illinois and how, we can consider different factors as it relates to that maintenance calculation. So, Reyna, is there a formula in Illinois for how long someone should pay maintenance or for how long someone should be receiving maintenance?
Yes. So maintenance in Illinois, pursuant to the statute, depends on the length of the marriage and the income of the parties. And then it's based on a percentage of that duration. So 5 years or less, it's going to be 20% of that duration. 14 to 15 years is going to be 60% of that duration. And then 15 to 16 years is 64%. And then 20 years, you're kind of looking at indefinite maintenance, meaning someone could be paying maintenance forever.
So what it sounds like to me is based on the length of the marriage, there are these different multipliers or percentages that would apply. And so one of the biggest factors as to how long you're paying or how long you could receive maintenance or spousal support is really determined by the length of the marriage and whatever multiplier is set forth in that statute. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely.
So Reyna, when is indefinite maintenance typically awarded given your experience?
It's honestly reserved for those very long-term marriages, 20 years plus, or in special circumstances where, maybe one spouse, sacrificed a career. They weren't able to kind of become self-sufficient in terms of finances. And, if that likelihood given their age or their capacity makes that very unlikely. And if there's just like a very large income gap between the parties, I would say those are kind of the exceptions or the factors in determining a indefinite maintenance.
Got it. And then when it comes to this, maintenance formula that exists in Illinois, do judges always strictly follow that formula or what does that kind of look like in real world practice?
They don't always. I would say, they do heavily rely on those calculations in the statute, but you can deviate if you have a good reason for the judge. Again, if it is one of those circumstances of a spouse sacrificed their career or they're just physically unable, to currently get a job and things like that. And also there's a cap in Illinois. So if the parties' gross combined income is more than $500,000, maintenance can, be deviated from the statute.
Yeah, and that's in addition to the other cap that exists, which is that 40% combined net income cap, which could also affect like how much a person takes or how much a person either pays or receives in maintenance depending on their income level too. So it definitely sounds like there's a lot of kind of nuances to this and that judges aren't just, strictly applying formulas. They're really looking at the facts and taking all of these factors into account, it sounds like.
Yeah, I would agree. Again, the judge's job is to just make sure it's fair. And the statute is there as a guideline, but that doesn't necessarily mean they have to abide by it.
What a great point. And then in terms of factors, what factors does the court consider when they're looking at how long support should be paid for or how long it should last?
So yeah, definitely like the earning ability of the other party. So is that person able to become self-sufficient? Is that person able to get a job? The standard of living during the marriage. That's kind of what maintenance is for, is to bring that other party, back to the standard of living that they've had for however many years that they've been married. If the other person needs time, if someone's finishing law school, and then, a few years they can become self-sufficient, things like that. And again, just the age and overall health of the parties, can they physically work at the moment?
Got it. And then can spouses agree on how long a person should be paying maintenance or how long a person should be receiving maintenance?
Yeah, same as the judges, the statute is there as a guideline. And as long as it's fair, judges do want parties to come to their own agreement. So you can have fixed term maintenance. I've seen some couples agree that maintenance is only going to be paid for the amount that the other person was a stay at home parent or things like that. You can also have reviewable maintenance. So you revisit in a few years to see if the parties have, increased or decreased their income. And indefinite maintenance, again, just paying for as long as the marriage was, which is 20 plus years. Or you can just waive maintenance entirely, meaning no party's getting maintenance. But I would be very careful about waiving maintenance because that is a forever waiver. Once that's in a prenup or a judgment, you cannot go back and say that you want maintenance.
And then what happens if circumstances change? What happens if someone's financial situation is different than at the time that they agreed on this maybe spousal support or maintenance award?
Well, I think that would depend on what it says in their divorce judgment. So if their divorce judgment says that it is modifiable, then yes, you can definitely go and make the argument, I've retired or I lost my job or I took a significant pay cut. I can no longer pay. Or the other party is earning more and therefore, the payer wants to pay less. But if it says it's not modifiable, then you're kind of locked in to that payment for whatever the duration states.
Yep. And that legal burden in terms of modifiability is that substantial change in circumstance. So that's what we need to prove as attorneys when it comes to whether or not support should be modified and or terminated at a later date. And then, when it comes to, we're talking about changes and modifiability, does remarriage or cohabitation, which is one spouse or ex-spouse now living with another third party, how does that affect maintenance duration?
Yeah, so if the other spouse remarries, that would terminate the maintenance because, again, now they have, another person there to support them. If the other person is just cohabitating with someone, that's, a little bit harder to prove, if you're not sharing bills and things like that. So that's definitely a higher burden to meet, but that could potentially be a reason as to why maintenance should be, terminated.
Definitely. And then, Reyna, what would you say is your advice for someone who is negotiating maintenance or who might be worried about being locked into these types of payments forever and that's really weighing on them?
I think I would just advise them to consider a different path. There's offsets, there's buyouts, and I would just ensure that the divorce judgment says that maintenance is modifiable so that they're not locked in to that set payment forever.
Definitely. And what should someone ask their attorney specifically if they're unsure whether they'll qualify for support or maintenance and how long that may last?
I think I would just reach out for a consultation because, it's based on this very specific formula. The attorney is going to have to know the income of the parties, how long you've been married, and, it's really hard to kind of get that accurate information on your own. So I would definitely just reach out and provide that information to an attorney.
Definitely get that clarity right from the attorney so that that person has kind of clear mind and the knowledge that they need to move forward accordingly. And then what would you say is the biggest misconception when it comes to spousal support or maintenance in Illinois?
I think today a lot of people still believe that it's automatic, that, just because you've been married for 6 months or however long that you're entitled to maintenance. Or even people, married 20 plus years, they're like, I know that I'm entitled to indefinite maintenance. But as we've seen, there's just so many different factors. It's really based on that formula, the duration of the marriage, the maintenance, but judges also want to be fair. So I would just be very careful in, entering into agreements and assuming that you're going to be granted something because that's really not the case in Illinois.
Absolutely. It's so fact-based. And I think that, people need to understand that those factors are there for a reason. So in order to get maintenance or spousal support, you have to first prove that you're an actual candidate for it according to those factors and the facts of your given situation. So what great feedback, Reyna. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Spousal support can feel confusing, unpredictable, and unfair, but it doesn't have to be. In our next episode, we uncover 5 key alimony truths that most people never hear about until it's too late. Whether you're negotiating payments or hoping to avoid them altogether, these insider tips can shift the entire outcome of your case. So click now and learn what your ex hopes you never discover.